Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Jack. Back again to talk about the release candidate PTR build that just went live with a massive change for healers in particular. It's one we just talked about a week ago in our video, the problem with healing, but now we are able to see firsthand that player stamina and enemy damage has been increased by 25%. Now, this is the exact same thing that we had at the start of the expansion, except it was 40%. So if you remember that, make sure you hit the like and subscribe buttons. Now, this adjustment, of course, is going to do just like we talked about. It's going to make healers less powerful. Your ability to top off a health pool is going to be diminished as a result of this. As I said before, when damage mitigation abilities and healing are too strong relative to player health, the only way to threaten players is to make enemy damage very high and spiky. Again, sounds very familiar, right? If healers can very quickly top off their teammates and mana isn't a limiting factor, enemies have to be tuned to have the capacity to do burst damage that kills players before healers can react. Don't have somebody at absolutely full health? Well, they die because each of these raid hits is hitting for 70-80% of somebody's health pool. You watch the Race to World first, you're watching Liquid and Echo dying in Phase 1 on repeat because somebody was at 80-85% health instead of 100%, and they perished as a result. Now, of course, this is not satisfying healer gameplay, and I would agree. Increasing player health gives players more time to react to incoming damage, and it makes players' choices about cooldowns and mana management more meaningful. What they also don't say is that this also gives the developers, the encounter designers, breathing room with the damage of mechanics, so that when they make a bursty ability, they can also have downtime before the next damage ability comes, and not every single boss encounter needs to be rot damage. It doesn't need to be ticks all the time. Because if there's one thing that encounter designers don't like, is having every boss's damage patterns be the exact same stuff. This gives them the breathing room that they can have a bursty encounter, and they can have one that has steady damage, and they can mix things up. Because when players are taking a longer time to top off their allies, that's totally fine, because they're not going to just sit around doing nothing anymore. They're going to have to spend the extra few seconds to top other players off. Now, this is also a 25% instead of a 40% healing adjustment, or sorry, damage adjustment, stamina adjustment. I think a lot of this is because our power isn't going to jump as much, they assume, as it did at the start of the expansion when we got all of the gear, all of the new talents, all of the power at our disposal. I hope that this is going to be enough. Although I think that they didn't go quite far enough the first time, I'm again a little worried about this once more. Now, the original problem with the 40% change, I have to tell you, was all about Evoker. And it continues to repeat again, which is really weird to me that they still haven't sort of like figured this out, okay? The last thing that they say that I want to point out is that along with the change, you'll see several adjustments to hybrid healing spells, items, and enchants, as well as percentage-based healing spells, okay? What you are going to see firsthand is that, yes, everybody now has more stamina, more health, huzzah! So a Mistweaver's ability like Chi Cocoon would just naturally get buffed by it because it gives you shields based off your maximum health. So, as a result, they tune it down and make it 8% of your maximum health instead of 10%. Right? This makes sense. And you can kind of go down the line. You say, oh, okay, Windwalker's going to do more healing to itself because your stamina was increased. So now let's buff all of these other spells so it doesn't feel like everybody's self-healing is just garbage now. Right? Makes sense. But all throughout these changes, there's nothing for Preservation Evoker. And this is what started the problem to begin with at the start of this expansion, okay? It was that Preservation Evoker, and kind of Druid, but mainly Preservation Evoker, was just dominant in its output. Just raids, Mythic Plus, whatever. And so those players who were playing Evoker were absolutely shredding the meters. And then what led to these massive nerfs in dungeons where they removed heal checks was because there was a grave imbalance between the top-end healers and the bottom-end healers in their capacity to heal people. They just were doing less healing by a massive margin. And now this change is, of course, scaling up and increasing the health pool of all the players and increasing the damage, and also just massively buffing Preservation Evoker, because they have spells that are healing proportional to health bars, proportional to damage taken, with Rewind, with Golden Hour. And once again, time is going to be a flat circle as a result. Preservation Evoker has been kind of getting steadily nerfed. It has been very steadily getting nerfed patch by patch, and now people were really worried from the beginning if this meant that Preservation Evoker would not be brought to the Race to World first, would not be brought to high keys, high-end environments. And now we're able to see firsthand that it's going to, because these abilities are just so damn powerful for the raid to have, the party to have. The overall output is going to just continue to be strong unless they do something about Rewind, Golden Hour, to be able to rein these things in. Because you're able to look all the way down the line. You know, even a Hunter's Rejuvenating Wind is now 8 or 16 of their maximum health instead of 10 or 20%. They're reining it in to make sure it's staying balanced. They're reining in Mistweaver's tank cooldown, or tank external. Or sorry, I believe this is the Celestials. But anyway, they're reining those things in, but not actually doing anything to Evoker. To be fair, they're not the only ones that are also going to be benefiting from this. Damage reduction gets a lot more valuable when the damage is going to be higher, right? When you're able to mitigate a larger quantity of damage, things like Devotion Aura, Barrier, Spirit Link Totem are also going to be incredibly good. In my previous video when I was talking about what specs I really enjoyed for the raid, I went on ad nauseum about how great Barrier and Spirit Link Totem are going to be. And once again, now that they're scaling up the damage and scaling up the stamina, yeah, more damage reduction is going to be better when there's this consistently high damage that's happening in the raid, and you're able to get everybody stacked up for it. So from my impressions, looking at some of these changes, and again, they didn't really do a lot for just overall healer changes. There's not any priest changes, or the cool specs at least. All of the other, specs in the game are just like DPS players, and then there's a lot of dungeon changes as well. These changes that they had today for the stamina and the damage going out are absolutely going to make sure that Preservation Evoker stays on the map in the World First Raid and high-end content and onward, because their ability to heal based off of damage taken has not been impacted whatsoever. And unlike a Shaman, which wants to be able to heal almost in that way, where it says, oh, if people took a lot of damage, they'll be low health and I'll be able to heal them for more. Preservation Evoker is just so much better because their mastery is healing when they have more health than the other player. And those abilities that we just talked about are healing proportional to damage taken. Unlike Shaman, which is relying on low health, somebody could be taking a massive hit, getting healed, taking another massive hit, and something like Golden Hour is going to incredibly show its value by being able to pump all that output. Now, they did rein it in with things like Temporal Anomaly, which puts out its lesser value echoes, of course, now having a proportional Golden Hour heal instead of the full value Golden Hour heal. But since they're also increasing the damage, I very much feel that a similar build, or a build that's going to take advantage of a huge variety of echoes to be able to benefit from things like Golden Hour, has to be at least getting some kind of consideration, unless they're just turbo boosting up Blossoms and forcing you into that scenario. So we'll see. We'll keep an eye out for that. It could be something that the Preservation Evoker experts are seeing a shift or a change in playstyle. I'll leave that up to them, but it absolutely is a massive benefit, of course, for Preservation Evokers. I think it's a really good change for just the entire game in general, but I am a little bit worried about the mana. As we've seen in the raid so far, there is just a huge amount of mana available to like all of the healers. Disc Priest, for example, has their 4-set giving free radiances, and they nerfed the mana cost of just about every atonement applicator. I believe a lot of the other specs as well have just really high mana efficiency, with like Mistweaver in particular getting a ton of mana back. In these patch notes, they just put in a nerf for the set bonus that Mistweaver has with their Soul Infusion, so that they're going to be getting it a little bit less frequently. Depending on how much that's going to be, we'll be able to look at in raid testing, because I believe we have one final raid test on Thursday or Friday, and then we're going to be able to start seeing how these classes are going to match up. So I was trying to get my tier lists out earlier, but since they had this change, we're going to have to wait until after this weekend's raid test to be able to get our final sort of idea as to which healers are really going to be shining in this raid. But I have a feeling, little spoiler alert, that Disc, Paladin, Shaman, and then Evoker could be the big four that we see for the next raid. We'll see. We'll see what my impressions are going to be. I do predict that we're going to see like Rashek again, maybe Zaskarn, and maybe there's a Kali Invasion would be the 3 fights that I think would be a good mix of just encounter testing, because they want to make these fights less bursty now, but also some fights that are really going to challenge the healers. So we'll see. We'll also be streaming all of it, and we just got started on Patreon if you want to support the channel in a new way and everything like that. Be sure to check it out. Linked in the description down below. Thanks so much for watching, guys. If you have any other questions I could answer for you, feel free to let me know. Catch y'all next time.